Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 79 today for the British Grand Prix in Season 5. And as you can clearly see, it is the debut for our second special livery of this season. An absolutely iconic one for Lotus. Yep, it's the John Player Special Gold and Black livery. Once again, like we did with the Gold Leaf livery, throwing it back for a limited time in this season, again in partnership with Radford Motors, who have been acting as one of our main sponsors in this team. In real life, Radford Motors specialise in building special Lotus builds with these such retro liveries. And such, we've completed the set, Gold Leaf ticked off, and now the JPS ticked off. This episode also brings us to the halfway point of the season, and so the mid-contract period has begun. And despite a bit of a rocky first half of the season, we are going to be re-signing Yuki Tsunoda for the remainder of the season. Last episode, he showed some real promise, and I think we can try and unlock some of more of that potential in the races to come. But I want to cast your minds back to the beginning of this season when we first revealed Lotus's entry back into Formula 1 with the partnership with Radford Motors. Now, in real life, one of the founders of Radford Motors is the 2009 F1 World Champion, Jenson Button. And I did mention he was going to be an advisor to this team for this season, and there was maybe a special plan for the future. And this episode is where that special plan comes into place, because yes, for one race this season, his home race, my home race, the British Grand Prix, Jenson Button is coming out of retirement for one special wildcard entry at the British Grand Prix alongside us in this team. This is going to be a very special episode for two reasons: this livery and this driver pairing. 100 rated with our facility upgrades as well. 76 focus, because of course any new drivers coming into this career series haven't been played with the low focus attribute that we've had since the very launch of this game, where the focus levels have pretty much stayed broken the entire time. So he's going to be raring to go in this one race. And this isn't the only wildcard entry at the British Grand Prix, because this race, Porsche Williams have decided to announce their new title sponsor, Golf. And with it, they've brought a former Porsche driver back to Formula 1 as well. Yes, we have two previous F1 drivers making a one-off return for this British Grand Prix. Mark Webber returns to the F1 grid to drive for now Golf Porsche Williams alongside Kevin Magnussen. A way of celebrating this brand new title sponsor for Williams for the remainder of this season, and a way to get the good feel vibes going for Williams and also Porsche with Mark Webber on the grid for one race. And of course, very fittingly, Webber and Button in real life were pretty good mates in their F1 career as well. So both of them hand in hand coming back to the F1 paddock with welcome open arms. This one is going to be pretty darn exciting. But away from them two arriving on the F1 grid for one race, it's going to be exciting for us because we've come off the back of two race wins back to back. We dominated in Italy, winning at Monza to Imola, and we now have a pretty darn good lead in the championship. But I want to try and extend it if we can, because as I've said, I really wouldn't mind if we can try and get a chokehold on this season and go on to try and dominate a little bit, because, you know, after so many times of failing to get a Drivers' Championship over the line in a title decider right at the brink, I really wouldn't mind trying to wrap it up earlier than the final race. But it's going to be tough, because there are actually some upgrades for some teams into this race weekend, surprisingly, because I really thought everyone was now plateauing and they have reached their max potential and they're trying to save for a regulation change. But Ferrari and Aston Martin both bring upgrades. So Ferrari looking to try and build on that speed they had at Monza but lacked a little bit at Imola, to try and bring them back to where they were around the Italian GP. And then Aston Martin, a real shocker, they've got ahead of a bunch of teams, so they could be a surprise, well, issue issue for quite a few of the kind of mid-pack teams as they try and get into the points for only the second time maybe in this season. Of course, Hulkenberg managed to get 2 points for them last episode, but can they build on that? So we might have a few surprises around Silverstone as we enter Saturday. Sunny skies at the moment, but there is some forecast from some rain at the end of Saturday, and then it looks like it may be a washout for Sunday with heavy rain. It's good to be back in the UK. Of course, there's going to be rain here on Silverstone race weekend, but here we go then. The first lap in anger in our JPS Lotus livery, and it looks absolutely naughty. Like, there's something about a black livery when you go to it. It's like you're entering your villain arc. And in that same trail of thought, well, if we continue like we have been at Italy, at Monza and Imola, we might well become the villain of this season in the eyes of the rest of the grid as we try and get a hold on this championship. But it's going to be tough. The competition is stiff. Leclerc looking pretty quick around here in Q1 of the Mercedes, but look at that, both Ferraris in the top 5 with those upgrades, and the Aston Martins, both P10 and 11, you know, first time they're both featured in the top half of these standings, and it means it does knock out some other big names. Piastri, Liam Lawson, Albon and Fernando Alonso, along with the 2 Renaults, all knocked out in Q1 as Andretti really slip in terms of performance compared to what they were at the start of this season, and Albon's really not having a great time in that Red Bull now compared to the days where he was fighting for championships in that Red Bull Honda. But that's what happens when you have a few upgrades and the track suits the other cars better. You are going to get some upsets, and you know, maybe with Aston Martin and Ferrari making those upgrades now compared to everyone else plateauing, that's going to change the pecking order for good for the remainder of the season potentially, unless some other people want to come out the woodwork with some surprise other upgrades. But for us, the focus is on making it through into Q3. Don't think it should be an issue, but you never know, so let's try and make this a cracking lap, and it is going to be a very tidy lap to go P1, but only by a couple of thousandths to Leclerc. So looks like he's properly up for it today, maybe to try and have a go at me, and we're looking good maybe to have a go at pole position. But as I said, there is rain on the way. I think it's gonna be intermediate in Q3, so that might put a damper, not pun intended, on my plans to go for pole position here in front of the home fans. Looking at who got knocked out, well, it'll be disappointment for Aston Martin not to make the most of it. Clearly, they didn't get the lap in. Maybe it started raining actually towards the end of the session, because I got my lap in very early, but it was overcast when I did it, so maybe there was rain just the end of Q2, and Aston Martin just procedurally aren't used to getting it right to get through into Q3, and they sent their cars out way too late because both of them are knocked out. Schumacher as well, along with Sainz and Felipe Drugovich, the second place man in the championship, so that's massive news for us, and it's insane news for Gulf Porsche Williams as Mark Webber and Kevin Magnussen make it through, along with Lando Norris and Bottas there, Verstappen, the lone Ferrari, and Vettel as well in the Audi Sport. So let's see what we can do. Of course, in these kind of conditions, that's where Jenson Button used to come alive a little bit in these changeable scenarios. So let's see how we fare in this session. I was pretty confident about trying to go for pole position, but now that it's raining, that may just change things. Jenson Button has gone purple for now, but others are setting quicker lap times, and we're all going around a couple of times to try and find that extra bit of grip. We fueled up the car for 2 consecutive laps, so we go for another, and we're able just to gain about over 4 tenths, losing a little bit in the last couple of corners as we try and dance the car around the chicane and to the line. It's going to be P5 at the moment, behind Leclerc, behind Vettel. I believe Button is up there with Max Verstappen in the Ferrari. Another great wet weather driver on our third and final run. We were 2 tenths up, lose a little bit, so we just about gained 1 tenth overall on that third and final lap, but that will only just secure us P6, just ahead of Mark Webber in P7. But what a return to the sport for Jenson Button in third place in the second row. But it's the Ferrari, Verstappen, who has blitzed everyone with a really, really quick time in the wet there for pole position. Leclerc alongside him on the front row. And to be fair, in a Gulf Porsche Williams, Mark Webber can be very pleased with P7, and he's out-qualified Magnussen, who's had plenty much more time in that car. So both are icons returning to the sport, doing very well indeed. But of course, I'm alongside Sebastian. We just can't get rid of our old pal Sebastian Vettel. We're alongside him for the beginning of this race, and as I said, it looks to be a washout one, so heavy rain. It's going to be a very tough one out there.
Welcome along then to Great Britain and the Great Silverstone circuit for today's Grand Prix. Silverstone circuit then is 3.6 miles, long, has a total of 18 corners, and of course is no stranger to the rain. There won't be any DRS available in these conditions, but the Wellington and Hangar straights are still good opportunities to tuck into the slipstream and make a pass. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and it's Charles Leclerc in P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Button, Russell, Sebastian Vettel, the owner driver, Webber, Norris, Bottas, and Kevin Magnussen, Drugovich, Sainz, Mick Schumacher, and Hülkenberg, Gasly, Stroll, Oscar Piastri, and Liam Lawson, Albon, Perez, Fernando Alonso, and Daniel Ricciardo fills the last spot on the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Now I wonder, Anthony Davidson, might we be in for some early pit stops today from the midfield teams? Trying to put a bit of pressure on or disrupt things for the leaders?
If you're in the middle of the pack, you got your own race to run. I don't think they're going to be thinking about causing trouble up front. However, closer to the head of the pack, don't be surprised to see some split strategies. If you're running second and third, for example, bringing one car in for an undercut while leaving the other one out there longer can put a lot of pressure on the leader and maybe force them into an error.
So even though we may have lost a bit of pace in Q3 compared to our dry pace, I think we can still do some serious work in the championship this episode. Leclerc, he's only just a couple of positions ahead. Drugovich, Repsol Haas have really struggled here this weekend in the dry in Q2, but I think, to be honest, they maybe got caught out a little bit with the rain at the end of Q2, and then, well, they didn't even get a chance to go out in the top 10 shootout, so who knows how their wet weather pace will be. And so they're on the back foot, and others are on the front, mainly Porsche Williams, or Gulf Porsche Williams now, as they're known for the rest of this season, and maybe Verstappen in the Ferrari. That time was scarily quick in Q3, but who knows what can happen with the full fuel and maybe some tyre wear in there for Leclerc, Button, Russell, Vettel, myself. A lot of drivers will be hoping to try and hunt down the Dutchman off P1 there today. Either way though, this is going to be a very special race, the debut of our JPS Lotus livery, and 2 wildcard entries. Jenson Button and Mark Webber begin a Formula 1 Grand Prix once again as we go to 5 red lights for the British Grand Prix, and we're underway, and the tyres all spin up and kick up so much water as it's heavy rain out here, and it's an absolute washout as Vettel and Russell are side by side through the first couple of corners into Village. Russell on the inside, Vettel goes a bit too deep as Verstappen gets away cleanly in P1, followed by Leclerc and Jenson Button. We've remained in P6 just about though. Mark Webber turning back the years, and the Williams, he's actually just behind me, nipping at the heels a little bit. We're taking this very cautiously. Heavy fuel, we've not driven this circuit on the full wets all weekend, so really no idea what the grip's like. But ahead of us, Vettel and Russell, they're not scared to have a go as Vettel once again tries to get past the Mercedes car but unable to. Webber is still trying to go around the outside of us, but we're going to just about manage to hang on. He's just got the nose in, but we're going to go to the racing line, use a bit of battery to stay ahead, and instead now it's going to be Lando Norris having a go at him in the Red Bull Honda. just ahead of the other Golf Porsche of Kevin Magnussen, who now has Sainz for company as he just gets chopped off and has to remain in P10. Bottas, Schumacher, Drugovich, all three of them will be looking to try and make some positions as that Ferrari, you know the pace it has in the hands of Verstappen, so Schumacher needs to pull up his socks a little bit. And then the Haas cars, well, I mean, usually in the races they're mighty at overtaking, but for whatever reason here at Silverstone they've just not looked too quick, or it just might be other cars have seemed quicker at this circuit. And to be fair, the leading man knows that all too well, because just last episode Ferrari really did not look comfortable around Imola, and then here they are, Verstappen leading the charge. So as we've said before, with maxed out cars it really can come to track which team prefers the circuit, who's set up better, and also the drivers themselves making the difference with focus and momentum through the season. But speaking about momentum, we've got plenty of it out the exit of Maggott and Beckett's, and using plenty of battery as well, which is harvesting quite a lot in the full wet conditions. We're going to send one on the inside of Sebastian Vettel and soaring away at the steering wheel just to make sure we keep it going in the right direction to get ahead into P5, and now hopefully looking to close up on George Russell, and then ideally more so Leclerc up the road. I mean, Button is stuck behind him at the moment, so we've got a bit of work to do, but we're setting a purple lap time as we flew past Vettel, and the clean air giving us some good room to work with is now behind on lap 4. A mistake from Magnussen, lock up for him, and he's now suddenly outside the top 10. He's dropped 2 positions. The Mick Schumacher and Valtteri Bottas had already been overtaken by Carlos Sainz, and we didn't catch that, but Webber up the road still doing a stunning job at the moment in P7 and still keeping that Red Bull at bay. Ahead of us lies Russell, and then this top 3 battle, and Button is keeping on the back of the rear wing of Leclerc, and they're both just outside 1 second of the Ferrari, so it is quite tight. There is now Webber locks up. Oh, the Williams are having a howler. What's going on? Brake issues for both drivers, or just, I don't know what the conditions, but it can't be a coincidence that both of them lock up in the same place. So like Haas had a race or two ago with Drugovich, maybe a brake issue for the Golf Porsche team, as we now watch Leclerc close up to Verstappen. They make contact, Leclerc and Verstappen banging tyres as they go through the old turn 1 towards Maggott and Beckett side by side, fighting for the lead. It's nearly 3 wide through this section, because here comes Jenson Button now coming through to overtake Leclerc. Couldn't quite have a go at Verstappen because he just got the rear end planted enough to get the exit. He's pushed away, and now JB looks behind him at Leclerc, coming back at him, made an error trying to get P1, and instead he's lost P2. He's down to 3rd place. It's not gone in the right direction for the man from Monaco, and he's now got Russell right up his gearbox, and we have closed up as well, along with Vettel just about, as we have dropped Vettel by a couple of tenths. But now us all bunching up, that well could bring Vettel back into play annoyingly, but in the clean air, another purple lap time, and these guys have all been too busy now scrapping that even Verstappen wasn't able to get a purple down there. But now soon come that same traffic for us. I don't think we'll be going as quickly now, as we're now tucked up in some dirty air, and more so now it's also just about making sure we don't lose concentration, because when you've got a car ahead of you in these conditions, it's so easy just to be chasing after them and not looking after your right foot or your left foot, as we're trying to dance the car on the outside line to get the tighter cut in, but it's just not working for us through Luffield. But we need to be careful, because any of these curbs could spin us out like we had at Spa, or any moment of lapse of judgment on the right foot could spin us out in a slow corner as we keep up with Russell. Leclerc struggling, but he's going to be saved by a safety car, because Lance Stroll has retired from this Grand Prix. So at this moment in time, I asked my engineer then what the weather situation was like, because he was saying that it would be lightening up a little bit in this race. So I thought, is there half a chance of us going on inters under the safety car? Unfortunately, no. The heavy rain is going to stay with us long enough where there's no point trying to risk anything under the safety car. But intermediate period is on the way. I don't think we'll get dries by the end of the race, but I think for sure we could be on the green wall intermediates by the end of this one. But for now, it is still very much wet weather, full wet tyre territory. And on to lap 12, Max Verstappen is going to get us on the way, and I'm raring to go to try and get at least one or maybe both of these Mercedes cars, because before the safety car period, Leclerc was struggling a little bit for grip, whether that's from a little bit of damage with that contact with Verstappen or what, but he was holding up Russell and backing him into us. So we need to be making the most most of that and having a go at both of them if Russell indeed does get tucked up behind Leclerc once again, and that's going to leave Button with some breathing room to try and keep up with Verstappen. So two guys pretty handy in the wet at the forefront, 1 and 2. Shock horror for us as well. We need to also watch out for Vettel, and that's another reason to try and get ahead of the Mercedes cars because Vettel is there lurking. But here goes Russell on the inside of the back straight. The two silver arrows side by side. Oh, bit of a wobble for Russell as he's trying to keep the car going, and that will be our opportunity to send one down the inside into the third last corner, round the last two corners on the outside. We'll get the traction just about as we go to the final corner to get ahead of Russell. And meanwhile, Jenson Button sets a purple chasing after Verstappen. So it's starting to heat up a little bit for both us JPS Lotus cars. We've got Russell, but now it's the Mercedes we really care about up next. But up and down the field, drivers have to keep their wits about them, and Lando Norris is going to fall foul of a lockup, just like the two Porsche Williams, and Lando is down to P9. Schumacher and Sainz are through, and it seems like the AI are really struggling at that one corner with lockups today. So, going to keep that knowledge in our back pocket in terms of when we catch up to Leclerc. Hopefully, maybe that's a place to try and set up the move. I mean, to be fair, we did get the overtake on Vettel done into that corner, but you'll see there that we've actually called into box in this lap because I kept on asking for updates on the weather condition, and finally on lap 15 here, towards the end, my engineer said, I reckon it might be time for the intermediate. So we've come in earlier than anyone. So with the first car, once again, onto a set of intermediate tyres. This time it'll be a little bit less of a gamble than it was at the Austrian Grand Prix, but nonetheless, still early on the call to get on those green wall tyres and hopefully find a bit of pace to maybe get ahead of Leclerc just on pure strategy, because, if they keep him out, even just for this lap, I'm hoping that will be enough maybe, because he was only just up the road from us, and also it will give us more breathing room to Russell and Vettel, because Russell was actually pretty darn quick, and it's a shame for him that he got held up by Leclerc so much, because I think he's the quicker of the two Mercedes cars today, and he was right there, still within 1 second. So this intermediate lap may be quite an important one for us. But here comes now Verstappen and Button out the pits on the next lap, on the intermediates, and they are unchallenged. But behind, we come through in what is P12 on the road, Vettel P13 and Leclerc behind in P14. So Leclerc has not only lost a position to myself, he's also lost a position to Sebastian Vettel. Russell stayed out on the full wet tyres, so who knows where he's going to end up in. He may actually be worse off than Leclerc has come through. So a bit of a mistake there for Mercedes, and maybe even Audi keeping Sainz out. Schumacher as well stayed out. But speaking of Schumacher, he's now going to go for a move. He's on the intermediates finally, and now he's having a go at the Red Bull of Lando Norris. Schumacher versus Norris into Luffield. It continues as the Ferrari tries to go right round the outside, but the Brit is not giving up in front of the home crowd, trying to keep that Red Bull ahead. He does nip back ahead to cut off Schumacher's racing line, but the German comes back at him on the inside. It's a fantastic battle in tricky conditions. There's still side by side into Maggott and Beckett. This is going to run and run, maybe for the whole lap. Sainz is right behind them as well, so this may turn into an Audi versus Red Bull and Ferrari battle, and even Bottas then as well lurking in the background. This is finally heating up here at the British Grand Prix. Schumacher on the outside, on the back straight. Lando on the inside, trying to get the elbows out to squeeze out the Ferrari. But finally, Schumacher gets ahead into P7. And now Sainz with a huge dive. And now it's the Carl-Lando battle. Sainz trying to go on the outside of the Red Bull. Norris struggling for grip now in the Red Bull. And then Bottas makes it 3 wide nearly into turn 1. Oh my word, the British Grand Prix has finally fully arrived here with this kind of action. It was a little bit pedestrian, I can't lie, in the first half of this race and full wets, but intermediates have unlocked the potential of this circuit and all these maxed out cars, as now even Drugovich now wakes up a bit in this race, and he's looking to get past Valtteri Bottas to maybe get at least one measly championship point. Every point's going to be crucial just for him right now in terms of damage limitation to the likes of Leclerc and myself in the championship. And now on the exit, it looks like he may just finish off that move to get into P10, but Bottas giving him a real hard fight, saying that he's definitely been the weaker driver this season, and Drogovic very much the only Repsol Haas in the championship. You'd think there'd be some team orders, but alas, there are none on the F1 games still yet, as we now move back to our POV. Lap 19, Vettel with the fastest lap, but now Verstappen and Button trading purple lap time, so the two in first and second. There may not be a lot of wheel-to-wheel side-by-sides going on, but they're certainly pushing each other right to the ragged edge in terms of lap times today. Lap 23, Button looks to have a little bit of a run, you know, maybe on the Ferrari. Will he try a late dive bomb? No, Verstappen's a little bit wide though, and Button closes up just a little bit there. It's under 3/10 the gap now for P1 and 2. Meanwhile, they're just building the gap to myself in third place, trying to keep up with them, but it keeps fluctuating from 3.8 to 4 seconds, and we can't even shake off Vettel that much. But we're now focusing back on this P1 and P2 battle, and again, in the same place as last lap, Button looks even closer this time, maybe, to apply that pressure to the Ferrari, and the Ferrari with a slight lock-up. Button goes through, bit of contact on the exit to get the move done. Bit of elbow grease needed there by JB, but he's done it. He's into P1 of the British Grand Prix, and there's now only 2 laps to go. Can he hold on? We know how quick that Ferrari is and how great it is at overtaking. I mean, Schumacher's had a blistering race this episode. Can he hold on? Well, as we move on to the last lap of the Grand Prix, it seems like he can, because Button goes purple again in the clean air to get half a second over on Verstappen. And meanwhile for us, the track has been drying, and you know what that means? Changeable scenarios. The AI have got the advantage. Vettel is now closed up to us, because if he gave us a couple of more laps, guaranteed this race would have gone to slick tyres then. But because we're in the last lap of the Grand Prix, we have to try and hobble along and try and stay ahead of the Audi. Our old pal, Sebastian Vettel, down the inside. The 6-time champion is trying to get the podium, and we're trying our hardest to stay side by side with him. The rear end is stepping up to nowhere, and we're having to soar away at the steering wheel to keep it going in a straight line. Get the power down finally. Bit of contact made, but it's going to be fairly respectful between myself and Seb. Into Cops, little lift off to give him the room, and we still keep it clean. That's how you go racing. But Vettel gets ahead, unfortunately, to P3. We're going to be right up his gearbox through Mags and Beckett's. This is it. It's our final chance to re-overtake him. There's not going to be another opportunity. It's just 2 corners to go at the end into Stowe, and then the final chicane as we use all the battery we can. Pull out to the inside. Vettel keeps it going, though. He's had the great mid-corner. We're squeezing each other nearly off circuit. 3 final corners to go. Vettel with a dive down the inside. We give him a bit of room to work with. There's some contact, unfortunately, because Vettel hopped the curb and was a passenger, but we managed to just about keep ahead in third place. But the man of the hour is the man who's returned for one single race in Formula 1. Jenson bloody Button has won the British Grand Prix.
Might not have been the finest race in history, but there's no question it was a critical win. What do you think it was today, Ant, that gave them the edge over the competition?
I'd say it was down once again to good, consistent driving, nailing the corners, working to the track conditions, and perfecting the team's strategies. They got all of these things right today, and the results speak for themselves.
Here comes your top 3 making their way down to the podium for what can only be described as a fantastic day for Formula 1.
It was written in the stars. Jenson Button returns to F1 with Lotus and Radford Motors, the team he's been advising all season. One race win here in Season 5. Even more so, really, just the way the race went. Himself and Max Verstappen at the forefront, just trading purple lap times. A joy to watch as 2 top wet weather drivers go at it. And Ferrari still longing for that elusive first race victory in a long time in this series. At Monza, it was me, and here at Silverstone, it's Jenson Button that steals the win away from Verstappen in a Ferrari, and we just about held on to a podium to make it a double British podium at the British GP, but Vettel gave us a good run for the money. A little bit, you know, frosty at the end there, but that was because he jumped the curb, so not going to hold it against him at all. But for us, it's actually a really amazing episode for the championship as well, because Drugovich, he did recover to some points, so he did his utmost best to limit the damage today for him and Repsol Haas. But Leclerc, you know, he was behind us as well, so we outscored the two nearest to us in the championship, so we can come away from this really happy in both respects of, you know, seeing JB get the win there, but also we've still pulled away some more points. And in the constructors, because of his win in the double podium, that's helped our team get ahead of Mercedes. Now, obviously, I know Tsunoda hasn't been scoring too many points for us, but I'm hoping with that momentum from Imola, he can try and come back into this car next episode and try and help us maintain that lead in the Constructors' Championship. But that has been a topsy-turvy and a thrilling British Grand Prix. What a story. 2 returns to Formula 1 for Mark Webber. It wasn't quite meant to be the same fairy tale as JB, but what a story here for our team and Lotus. Guys, if you have enjoyed it, hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.